Hello, I'm Marina Bergenstock, and welcome to the 5th installment of TABLEWORK, a TAPS video series featuring members of our show's creative team and casts in roundtable discussions of their scholarly and creative efforts for taking their production from the page to the stage. This phrase, TABLEWORK, is a performing arts term for the early rehearsal period focusing on the script and source material analysis. Today's panelists will help us dive into TAPS's fall main stage show, As Soon as Impossible, a world premiere staging of a new play by playwright Betty Shamieh. As Soon as Impossible has had a different rehearsal and development process than other Stanford plays due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It has enjoyed a Zoom staged reading in collaboration with local regional theater TheatreWorks this past May, and will now be finally taking place here on stage at Stanford more than 5 months after it was originally supposed to run. Before we begin our first question, I'll ask the panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Samuel Saber, and I am a professor here at TAPS, and I am the director of this production.
I am Becky Vidertha. I'm the costume designer for this production, and I teach here at TAPS.
Excellent. So our first question, what are some themes, images, or motifs that first struck you when reading the script, and how did they become incorporated into your design or directing work?
Motifs, a broken hip, a lake, and a birthday.
Excellent.
I would say friendship and fishing.
Wonderful. How have they become incorporated into the work?
Well, I mean, this is a comedy, so just brace yourself to laugh, hopefully. But one of the things that I really love to do is I love to bring comedy into the design, into the clothes. And so the other day I was talking to an actor and we were trying to figure out more ways of incorporating fishing jokes and fishing equipment into their costume. And I'm excited to dig even deeper and find more little comedy fishing moments in the clothes. Friendship, really, like I mean, this play really centers around these two characters and their friendship, Ramsey and Arthur, and actually trying to equalize them and make them seem kind of similar so that we can really see how they're connected and their really kind of unique friendship that they have.
Excellent.
The play is really about these two guys who come to this lake for rest and respite from the world and staying away from basically the city. And on this fateful summer, what happens is you've got this young woman who is one of their granddaughters. I'm not going to say which one. She shows up and creates chaos. And this ensuing chaos is what the play is about. Now, the surprises, the idea of an impending birthday / potentially doom is really what this play is about in terms of the movement of plot and the themes of the play itself.
Excellent. So what are some unforeseen hurdles that either of you have experienced when mounting this production?
I would say for design, I really like, specifically with a play that is sort of realistic, to know where the actors are coming from so we can bring some of them into the role. And we've been working on this for a really long time without actors. And so just kind of waiting and trying to investigate the characters, but then being able to really play it easy and fast and loose so that we can incorporate those things here at the 11th hour as we're actually like putting it together.
Makes sense.
I would say the pandemic is the biggest hurdle. This play was supposed to happen in the fall of 2020. And we actually began our process of working towards this production date, and then the pandemic hit and it was not possible. So we said, okay, we can do it in the winter of 2021. And so we started to prepare for the winter of 2021, and then it was impossible because, well, you couldn't be in the room at the same time. So we said, okay, we're gonna try for spring. Spring came along, and there was all these California rules and Stanford rules and world rules and so on. And then we decided, okay, we might as well just do a reading and a workshop, and TheatreWorks partnered with us, and we did the aforementioned preparation. And then alongside that delay, we said, no, we do it in the summer of 2021. And we even got some funding in place in order to do that. And then it did not happen in the summer of 2021. So the biggest hurdle is that this is the show that's been trying to get done for a year and a half. And finally, here we are. You've got a beautiful set. You've got costumes and actors and rehearsals every night. And it's finally happening. And frankly, it is, as I look at the work happening in rehearsal and with the actors, and I see the runs and the laughter and the joy in rehearsal, it's been worth it.
Excellent. So you've touched on this a little bit with comedy, but can you talk about how the show's genre, comedy, has inspired some of your directorial and your design choices?
I'll let you go first on this one.
Sure. Color is a big part of the comedy. We're using a lot of light colors, so the color palette is quite light. There are also various ways that we're playing with error. We're playing with falls. We're playing with mistaken identities, hiding, hearing and mishearing. And so I would say comedy is really, if you think of the 1950s, 60s comedy, American film in Hollywood, this is really what we're doing. This play could have been written by Neil Simon. And sometimes I tell people Neil Simon hasn't died. He now goes by the name of Betty Shamieh. But really, the inspiration for the entire play is this idea of knowing and not knowing, and also loving and not loving, which a lot of comedy as a space lives in that area of loving and not loving.
For me, comedy is boosting color, it's adding patterns, it's, how do we find the light and the fun in, in maybe like a portion of the play that is a little bit more serious? How do we find the realistic character, but just boost it a little bit, so that we can find the fun? These clothes may be things that you can buy in the store, but it's just a little bit elevated so that you can find, find the lightness. We need it so much right now after, a year and a half of not having a whole lot of lightness in our lives. So anything that we can do to just support the comedy and find those subtle details that maybe not everyone in the audience is going to get, but that make us laugh and make the actors laugh, because that'll translate to the audience in the play.
There are also a lot of references in the play that, it's like, references to movies that you might have seen, phrasings that kind of like are similar to things you may have known. And so that's also, there is a self-referential aspect to the comedy that I'm sure the audience will recognize. But,
so Samar, you were just talking about Betty, our playwright. What has it been like to work with her on this and this world premiere production?
Doing a new play by Betty Shamieh is a privilege, like truly a privilege. She's always ahead of everyone. Since we started rehearsing this process, it's been a process of catching up to her, having written this play, and learning how her mind works, how she sets up jokes, how she sets up plot, how she plans things that come back later on. And so my experience has been one where I was often humbled by her intelligence and humor. And at the same time, it's been an experience of agency, because whenever I've wanted to bring up something that I thought was interesting, she was a receptive audience. So on occasion, there were problems that arose, and I just went to her and said, hey, we're having a problem with the scene. We don't know what to do. Sometimes because of the way we're doing the play, and sometimes because the play has existed for a while and hasn't been done. And she just would come back always, like I would suggest an idea, and then she would come back with a better idea. And so her desire to constantly make beautiful theater and make her own theater better is probably the biggest asset that we've had in this production. Working with a living playwright who is generous, kind, and impressive as a literary figure and as a human being is quite a privilege.
That's beautiful. Betty's wonderful. And Becky, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience working on this world premiere with a living playwright, with this new script that has had some changes along the way.
Yeah, it's always a delight for me to work on a new play. I've been working on lots of new plays throughout my career, and so coming back to this is always just something that I really appreciate. There's so much imagination that goes into new plays, not just the playwright putting the words on the paper, but the way that we can all imagine this world together. We get to create it, we get to make it. The designers with the director, with the actors, we're making these characters together, we're making this world together. And so it's a really great muscle to be able to flex. And I also just love working on Betty's plays. Her words are lyrical, her characters are full and deep and really interesting. And so that's a big piece of it for me, is just getting to work on Betty's play. Yes, it's absolutely a privilege to be able to do that.
So do either of you have a favorite moment of collaboration between either you and another designer, or you and an actor, potentially you two together?
No, we don't collaborate.
Collaborate beautifully.
We don't collaborate. She says what to do, and I say, it sounds great. Actually, you costumed me for everybody when I played Death.
Yes, it's true.
And
It's true.
so that was kind of cool to work with you as an actor and then to work with you as a director, because it was a totally different experience in both cases. I would say working with Becky is really quite awesome because she shows up with a lot. There are designers, actually Nina as well. I would say we've been very lucky in this production. Becky showed up with all the research, the images, the ideas, and we always were discussing real things that are in front of us. Whether it is text, language, images, inspirations, evidence of situation within the play. And so I found that collaboration quite fruitful because I didn't feel like I needed to show up with everything, and that's a sign of a great collaboration. Same thing with Nina. What's great is that the process took a long time. And so one of my favorite moments of collaboration is when we were doing the TheaterWorks reading, and we were talking about what we would do for background for the reading. And in one of the meetings, I was like, what if we do the reading in front of the maquette, the model of the set, which is this set, right? And then use that as the background. I wonder if Nina would say yes. And of course, TheaterWorks emailed Nina, and Nina was like, yeah, sure. And she took these pictures that are very clear, specific for each scene by scene. And then we were able to do the staging, the Zoom staging of the play on Zoom, on the screen, in front of her set. And it was absolutely beautiful. It worked marvelously. And so that's another moment where I would say great minds sometimes when they meet in one place that is common and of the same spirit, great things come about. And I really did feel like I was working with great minds, and thus I was able and wanting to bring the best part of me as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a yes and space,
Yeah.
It's definitely a place where you can come with crazy ideas and And I mean, sometimes I have ideas that have nothing to do with costumes, and I love that Sammer's willing to listen to them, because sometimes we just need to research things in order to get a better sense of our characters. So I was on the internet one day and I was looking at the California state fishing guidance, because we've got these guys that fish, and I was just reading through how to fish for the fish that are in Lake Berryessa, because there's like a PDF document that you can print from the state of California about how to fish in this lake. And I was reading about how to fish catfish in the lake, and I just burst out laughing because one of the things on the list was that you can use hot dogs to fish for catfish in Lake Berryessa. And I immediately emailed Sammer. I was like, "Did you know?" And some directors wouldn't have time for that, but including that in the conversation and including that in the comedy, I mean, who knows if there's gonna be a hot dog showing up on stage? That's a prop. But having that sort of communication and collaboration where we can talk about anything and everything in relationship to this play really makes it fun. And that's why we do this, because it's fun. So we get to talk about really cool things.
And part of it too is all these quirky aspects of the play are what makes a comedy a comedy.
Yeah.
But also there has been a lot of depth. Discussing issues of discrimination that occur in the play and around the play. This play is about the state and living condition of being Arab American. It is of the Bay Area, in the Bay Area, and Betty grew up in the Bay Area. And so this is an area that she calls home, and to write an Arab American play about where she grew up is really a significant contribution to American theater and to this region in particular. And so we had quite a lot to talk about in terms of what it means to be Arab, what it means to be discriminated against, what does it mean to have 2 decades or even 3 decades like what Arab Americans have gone through. The Desert Storm in the 90s, the various cultural productions on terrorism that happened throughout the 90s, September 11th, Guantanamo, what happens in the invasion of Iraq and how that was associated with the invasion of Afghanistan, and then all the past 2 decades with the various cases of discrimination that happened against academics, lawyers, people in everyday life in the United States, the arrests and so on. The see something, say something ads that were quite targeted. So much actually is the context of this play. And while it is a very funny play, underneath it, there is so much reality that Arab Americans continue to contend with. And so we were able as a team to marry those two and feel comfortable with the hard discussions around them.
Yeah. And it's so great to be able to have those discussions and to be able to house those discussions in this comedy, because it just makes it more accessible. And it makes it accessible for the audiences that are coming in to see the play. And it's exciting to have that opportunity to do that.
I can say definitely as I'm Arab. I'm not American. Potentially I could be American one day, but living in the United States for 15 years, I would say I was able to talk more about the horror of being Arab American or living like an Arab American in the United States in the last year with this play than I had the previous 14 years. So even for participants in the play, I think it makes a difference. Yeah.
Thank you both for those answers. I have one last question for you, and that is, what is one thing that you would like the audience to walk away from this play thinking about?
You go first.
Oh, okay. I hope they get to know and love these characters for all their warts and for all of their miscommunications, and I hope that they each one of them, where they come from, who they are, and their relationships with each other, and I hope they can see themselves in each character, And I hope they walk away with a smile on their face.
I would say show up with the best version of yourself, the one that wants to have fun, the one that wants to learn and participate in a community, and at the same time find the joy of being in a theater with a live audience, looking at a team of generous, beautiful actors working in company. So with this great ensemble, what we have is a kind of generosity that is emanating from the stage, wanting to tell a story, and sharing with a kind of joy that I hope will be met with equal joy. And so that's what I want the audience to show up with and leave with.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. And we really hope that you join us for As Soon as Impossible.